Welcome to the podcast, fellow griever. I'm Melissa, your host, and I'm with you on this journey because my own incredible 21-year-old son, Alex, died by suicide on August 7th in 2016. My world was shattered, but slowly, bit by bit, I began the difficult journey of rebuilding a new life, just like you may be doing right now. So know that I see you, because I am you. Thank you so much for being here. It truly means more than I can say. And if you are new to the podcast, please consider listening to the introduction, Meet Me, episode number 1, which is now linked in the show notes starting in late season 6. Listen to know what to expect from the podcast, to learn more about me, and so that you will know all that I offer in my community for support, connection, and healing. If you are not a new listener and haven't listened to this Meet Me episode recently, it's updated and you may learn something new. Every week, we will continue to explore the questions that haunt us, seek the courage to uncover the healing tools within us, and offer the comfort of a community we all need so very much. Come along with me, because this is so very lonely, but we do not have to be alone. Together, let's choose to find meaning and even happiness amid the leftover pieces before us. If you are listening, I am guessing that you too have lost someone to suicide. A child, a sibling, a parent, maybe a friend, or anyone you love. I officially invite you to be a part of Volume 1 of Because They Are Loved, a powerful new anthology of poems and letters that I am publishing, written by you, those left behind. Submissions are now open through June 30th with special first volume pricing. All proceeds go to support suicide loss services, charities, and grievers, and publication is planned for August 7th. Please listen to the end for a special coupon code just for you. Hello, fellow griever, and today I am going to share with you a recent conversation I had with Betsy Stephenson. We talked about her son, Charlie, who was smart, witty, reserved, kind, and was silently living with being very unmotivated and being depressed. And despite doing what seemed like all the right things, Charlie, a rising senior in college, died by suicide in July of 2022 at only 21 years old. It was shocking, of course, and devastating. But both Betsy and her family are learning to live with it and to carry it with grace. Betsy Stephenson lives in Alexandria, Virginia with her husband and Labrador retrievers. When she isn't visiting her grown daughters in North Carolina or South Carolina, she's helping public affairs clients tell their story to policymakers and the media. Blackbird is her first book. And so some of the things you'll hear us talk about besides that incredible book, which we get to, and I just love talking about, we talk about some things like how they responded as a family when Charlie reached out, when he spoke first about his thoughts of depression and self-harm. We talk about things like the trip she took after he opened up about his struggles and the letter she wrote him. A letter that he carried with him, apparently, because it was found in his backpack after he was gone. We talk about letters that he wrote and left behind. We talk about how they spoke the open truth from the beginning. We talk about incredible signs. We talk about being selfish in your grief. And of course, we talk about Blackbird, this incredible book. We talk about the reason behind the artwork, the titles, all the things. And then she shares something really interesting about a syndrome I've never heard about. But you have to get all the way to the end to listen to that one. And you're not going to regret it. This is a good one, guys. So let's not wait any longer and go ahead and dive into this episode with Betsy. Welcome. Hi, Betsy. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's my honor. to be able to talk to you about your book, Blackbird, but also about your son, Charlie. And the first thing I'm going to ask you to do is share a little bit of your lost story, whatever you're comfortable sharing.
Yes, Charlie was my youngest child, youngest of three, and he was a rising senior in college. He was going to college in Texas and he lived in Texas. And when he died, it was quite shocking. We had only recently found out that he was even struggling. We He shared with us in the spring before he died that he was thinking of harming himself. And that was an absolute, we couldn't believe it. And I flew to Texas to be with him. And the situation was he was quite distraught. He cried a lot, which was not characteristic. He said he was scared, but he was also doing all the quote right things. Okay. I spent a week with him and we talked a lot openly about what was going on with him. And he shared then that he'd been feeling unmotivated for about a year. And that was his word, unmotivated. And that he was having a hard time. And he had put himself in therapy. He had contacted the health center at his college and was seeing a therapist regularly as a 20-year-old, right? Pretty astonishing. He had not told us, he didn't tell us that this was going on with him. And even though I think it did help, he still was having a hard time. And he even at one point called the campus crisis line. So he was hiding his pain, his depression, but he was trying to fight it, right? And so once we learned he was considering self-harm, it was all hands on deck. And I spoke very directly to him. I said, "Are you thinking of killing yourself?" And he said no. And I spoke about how I'd had depression on and off over the years and how it could come and go. And sometimes it's really bad and sometimes it's really manageable, and was very open about the effects that it had on me, but how treatable it was. And he promised that he would not harm himself. And he promised that he would reach out if he was feeling at risk. And he was seeing a therapist. He was working. He was making plans. We saw him between his episode of the self-harm threat and he died. We saw him 5 times. He lived in Texas and we lived in Virginia. He came home several times. We were met in Louisiana for his sister's college graduation. We were always checking on him. And I said, "Look, I don't need to know what you're talking about with your therapist. I don't need to know the ins and outs of every moment of your life. But this is serious. So I am going to ask you, how's your mood? How's your outlook? Tell me, what are you thinking?" And his sisters, we just kind of stepped up communication and conversation, right? He lived with people, so he was always around people. So we felt like he had this great support and engagement. And he said, I'm doing okay. It's hard sometimes, but I'm doing okay. I feel good about it. I like my therapist. He had made plans for travel and seeing friends. And when we saw him, he didn't look healthy, I'll say. He'd lost a lot of weight. He was having a lot of trouble eating, but he was very conscientious about it. He was trying to exercise. He knew he needed to keep some food in his body. He was trying to make it count. And so we really thought that even though he was having a really hard time, that he was okay. And in fact, he came to visit. He came home for about 5 days and spent a lot of time with us. He had an event at his high school that he went to, and he saw a lot of his friends from high school, and they went out and they were hanging out in people's basements and going to restaurants and bars and having a great time. And when we dropped him at the airport to return to his home where he lived for school, we gave him a hug goodbye. And my husband said, when we pulled away, he said, he's going to be all right. He's going to be fine. And 3 weeks later, he was dead. And so, yeah, that was July 2022.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for sharing that, because even though there's so much power in our story, including it being a healing act for us, it's also still always hard. So thank you for sharing that. I know we visited a little bit prior to recording, but not a lot. And we don't know each other prior to this for the listeners. But the similarities, there's always lots of differences, of course, but there's a lot of similarities in our story. Alex was Rising Junior. He had shared once that he had thoughts of harming himself in the spring. He died in August. He had a hard semester that last semester, and he wouldn't even come home for his brother's graduation, which they were super close. His brother's 2 years younger than him. And he was graduating from high school in May of that year. So just 3 months before Alex was gone. And my sons and I didn't really hardly ever argue. My daughter's another issue, but my sons and I didn't hardly ever have harsh words. And we had the closest thing Alex and I ever had to an argument over him not coming home, because I said, I just don't understand. He couldn't really give me what was a concrete answer. And I remember him saying something akin to, because I said, get your butt home. He lived 2.5 hours away. He could get in his car and drive, Betsy. He didn't even have to buy a plane ticket. And I said, you need to get home. It's your brother's high school graduation. Just like Alex, he was also graduating with an international baccalaureate diploma, which is a really big deal. So I said, your brother's worked so hard. You guys are so close. Why would you not be here? And he kept saying things that were somewhat cryptic to me, like, Mom, you don't understand. I'm going through a really hard time. Things are difficult here. And I later found out he was at odds with some of his fraternity brothers. But at the time, I just thought, what is so bad that you can't come home? Because even though I knew he had been struggling a little bit that semester, to me, it was 21-year-old struggles. It was, or I should say 20, he was 20, he turned 21 in June, just 2 months before he died. But he's a junior. He's trying to hold down a part-time job. He's in a fraternity. He went into management with the fraternity. It was a rigorous college. It all made sense to me. He had broken up with a girlfriend he had dated the whole first year he was there. And so all these things made sense that there's a little extra stress on my plate. He let his grades go a little bit for him. And so he was stressed out about that. But we were in touch. And at one point, I think it was in March, so 2 months before the graduation argument, Betsy, he had said that, kind of like your son, he had taken himself to the counseling center and he had enrolled himself in counseling. Now, they were way backlogged. He only went a few times. And unbeknownst to me, they had written some things in his chart that I later found out, like they gave him a diagnosis really quickly in order to give him medication. And that's a problem. You shouldn't. So he was on a medication for short term, claimed he didn't like it, so went off of it. And then we had him home from the end of June until 8 days before he died. So I had him 5 of the last 6 weeks of his life. He came home for that 5 weeks. And I tried to watch him because I knew he'd been struggling, but I also wanted to give him his space, and he seemed fine. Like he was doing all the things. He was engaging with his friends. He was doing things. He seemed good. Now he, on the other end, had gained a little weight and didn't look very good, but a little weight on a young man, look, not a big deal. They can usually lose it in a week.
Right.
But he didn't look as healthy as he had looked before. But again, sometimes in college that happens too. And I knew he'd been struggling. So I kind of side-eye watched him and tried to give him his space at the same time. But before he went back, I sat down one-on-one with my son face to face and had lunch and said, "You've seemed fine. You actually seem really good, but I need you to tell me if you're okay. Do you need to stay in counseling?" And I knew he wasn't happy where he was, but he didn't necessarily want to give up. So
Right.
that was the discussion. Was I kind of said, you know, realize that it wouldn't be failing if you switched colleges or if you went on another path. There's always other options. Like we had this whole realistic conversation. Let's be real. If you're struggling, and he said, "Mom, I feel like I'm in a really good place." Even friends later said he was better and we'd seen him in a long time. And so I felt like he was on top of it. He said he didn't think he needed to go back to counseling. He said he thought he was doing good. And I said, "You'll be sure to tell me if you're not." And when he had told me about the self harm thought, I cried. I didn't do the right thing and say, "Are you thinking of suicide?" I cried and said, and I didn't yell at him or anything like that, but I said,
No,
"Honey," I said, "Honey, that's really serious." And I feel like that was his barometer to test how far he could go with me. I mean, that's what I feel like now. And so that's why I
Mhm.
always encourage people, go do what you did, go all the way there. Now you're sitting here and saying you did all those things. And like Charlie and Alex was the same. He was making plans when he hugged me on the front step when he left. And he said, "I'll be home in 2 weeks." He said, "I'll be home. Don't cry. Like, don't cry, Mom." So then we had several text exchanges, but 8 days later, he was gone. 8 days later. So you don't know. The signs aren't always the signs. And that's why this discussions like this are important. I think that a lot of the signs were created for an older model of the, let me say, the traditional group that we were worried about for suicide, which was traditionally middle-aged men. Middle-aged white men traditionally is where the
Mhm.
model was built around. So are they giving away their things? All those things. And that's what we think we're supposed to watch for. But I have talked to hundreds of people now in the last 4.5 years and worked with moms, and they have to look at a new model of when we're talking about younger people under the age of 30. They don't fit that isn't what you're watching for. You're not watching for, are they giving away their things? Are they not making plans? Because almost none of them fit that model. Almost none of them.
I think you're right. And of course, we have turned it into forensics exercise in those last few weeks and months and trying to understand, right? I think that's a very normal part of the process. And it's where I've landed is that we did a lot and we did a lot that was effective, but the depression was stronger. And even though I had depression, I had even had suicidal thoughts a long time ago. I did not realize how powerful it could be. I felt like in the conversations I was having with Charlie, I I actually wrote him a letter, and because even though we had been talking about these things, I wanted him to have it on paper, right? I wanted him to be able to refer to all these things that I needed him to know from my perspective. And the essence of the letter was that this is a very small part of your brain that's talking to you and pulling you down and telling you that things are no good and that they're not going to get any better, or that are making you feel really insecure and down on yourself. It's a small part of your brain. And the rest of your brain is this big, beautiful thing that, is full of the humor and intelligence and kindness and curiosity that has gotten you through your life so far and that will pull you through for years and years. And you can't let that little bitty part of your brain take over. Like, just know that it's a fact. Like, try and step outside of yourself and say, this is a little bitty thing. I'm not going to let it overtake me. And I said, and I gave myself as proof. I said, I can tell you this because I've been through it before. Think of it this way. When you think about me, your mom, do you think about someone who is downtrodden, hopeless, always like feeling very doubtful about the future? The answer is no, because I have come through it, because I got help, because I did the things I needed to take care of myself and to keep that little part of my brain in its place. And I was in my mid 50s at this time. And I was like, it's hard. I know it's hard. But once you do it, you also are empowered to know I can do this. I'm bigger than those lies that depression tells me. And so I gave him this letter. He carried it in his backpack. And we found, so he did not leave a suicide note, but he had written some letters that he left behind. They were those letters that you write that you never want to send, you don't mean to send. And they were kind of journaly things that had happened to him and observations. But he also talked about regrets or concerns or things like that. And in one of the letters, and they're kind of all over the place. One of the letters, he left them on his desk. So he wanted us to see them, right? It said something to the effect of, I will do everything I can to fight this evil in my mind. I will not let it win. So he knew that a part of his mind was malfunctioning. He was aware. He could understand that information, and he was taking steps to fight it. All the things that we've just talked about. He knew it was good for him to make plans. He knew it was good for him to talk to his friends and exercise and be engaged. And yet, that's how powerful the brain can be when it's malfunctioning. And it is sobering. And for parents, I mean, it's really scary. It's really scary. Charlie, we thought he was doing all right. 2 days before he died, he went to work, everything was fine. He ended up talking to his best friend from high school till late into the night, till like the middle of the night. They just got on for hours and hours. And Charlie was blessed with great friends back home, friends at other colleges, friends at his school where he lived, and his sisters. And so he was really connected. And then the day before he died, a bunch of his friends, it was summer, so people were college town, kind of cleared out, but people that were there were all hanging out, right? Doing a lot of things. And people up and down, there was this one street where there's a lot of group houses. And they all went out and they went to dinner and they went to bars. They're all 21 and older and having a good time. And afterwards, they went back to his house, and some guys were playing pool and Charlie was playing cards, and he ended up getting a conversation with a girl that lived across the street that he'd known from high school. And she was kind of stressed about drama. And he said to her, whatever you're feeling right now, it's going to pass. It's not going to last. These feelings you have, they're not going to last. And he said, if you ever need me, you can call on me. I will be here for you. I'm your friend. I'm always here for you. And he was gone within hours. So he had the knowledge, the ability to recognize the fickleness of moods and outlook and anxiety. He could talk about that with somebody else for them. But then he woke up the next morning and he couldn't do it for himself.
Yeah. The power, it speaks so immensely to the power that, like you said, that little misfiring, the misfire can happen in our brain. And we're so mystified by it. But the brain is our biggest organ, it's our most complex organ. And so to think that it can't get sick, whether it be chronically or acutely, of course it can. I mean, for some reason we have a hard time computing that our brain can misfire on that level. That some people will say, but I didn't think there was anything wrong at all. Others say, like we did, that our children were struggling, but it felt like pretty typical struggles for somebody their age and their circumstances. But yet they were surrounded by people that loved them, and they loved many people, and they had lots of support and help and all these things. They don't fit the mold in our mind of what we think somebody that would decide life isn't worth living anymore. But what we come to know on the other side of it is it's absolutely not that cut and dry. It's not that simple, that our brain is so complicated that it absolutely has the power to convince us of things that we in our right mind could otherwise not be convinced of.
Well, even just moments before.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what's so scary. And I think when they're young and they don't have a fully pre-developed frontal cortex.
Prefrontal cortex, exactly.
Decision making.
And now there's all the other things that, I mean, like you said, there's it's an exhaustive forensic study. I like the way you said that. 8.5 years in, I've done my fair share of exhaustive forensic study on the situation. And you're right. I mean, Alex was out just hours before, and he was watching the Olympics with some friends. And yet, I guess I kind of say a perfect storm lined up in his life that week. And I also think he'd come home and felt very safe and reconnected and all of that. And then he kind of slingshotted back into this environment that was very unhealthy for him. We didn't know how unhealthy at the time because we only know what they share with us. And
and he probably didn't recognize how unhealthy it was.
Exactly. I don't think he did either. And so we don't talk enough about transitions with young people and how very important it is, not only for young people to understand that transitions are a time we have to pay attention to, but parents need to know more about transitions in today's world because young people are faced with things that we never even dreamed of when we were growing up and in college and doing all the things. And so it's so important to see them through these transitions in a way that they're prepared for it. They're prepared for what's going to happen and how they might feel. And so he'd been out with friends. He had people there in the house. He had reached out to his stepfather about, as far as we can tell, 30 to 60 minutes before he was gone, because it was like 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning. He knew he's a locomotive engineer. So he knew he would be getting off a train.
Right.
His best friends, me, everybody did the whole, why wouldn't he call us? He knew we would be there. And I remember his best friend saying, Melissa, he knew I had a new baby. He probably didn't want to wake me. He knew you would be asleep. That was Alex. That was he wouldn't.
Yes.
It's the whole, I don't want to burden anybody. I don't want to bother you. And he was very much that kid. He actually saw many people through depression, apparently, unbeknownst to me in high school. And again, so I see this same type of kid, which tells you there is a type. There are kids we need to watch more. And it could be any kid, but most of them have these common threads they're carrying. They're usually the person in their world that other people rely on. They don't want to be a burden. They're usually bright and funny and all these things. And so I don't know what we think a suicidal young person is supposed to look like, but it doesn't look like what we think. And it could be anybody. So let's talk about, you're still very early on, and yet you've decided to tell your story in the book. And from what I know, from what I have read, I have not read the whole thing yet, because I haven't had it that long, but I'm looking forward to finishing it. Betsy, I actually have the actual copy on order too, because I like physical books as well. And so you chose at some point to decide to write your story in a very candid way, in a very, let's talk about it all. Let's talk about difficult things. Let's not hide behind it. Let's not make it seem too analytical. Let's talk about what really happens and how people really feel and how this really affects us. When did you decide to do that? How all that came to be and how it's going for you?
So I guess truly, I wasn't thinking of writing a book right away, but we decided as a family, right when Charlie died, to be really forthcoming about cause of death. A lot of people are not. I think between the taboo of suicide and the discomfort around it and just the shock. I mean, it's hard to make any decisions in those early days and hours. And so it's understandable that a lot of folks just like, I, I don't know, so I'm not going to say anything. My day job is a crisis communications consultant. And so I work with clients on how to have hard conversations about things that have gone terribly wrong, and found myself in the situation where I needed to apply that advice to myself. And I realized that people have questions whether you want to answer them or not, right? And so we put in his obituary, we put in his death notices, we said he died of depression. And we spoke openly about that. And what we found was that it certainly helped us because it removed, you're under the most crushing burden you'll ever have probably in your entire life, right? I hope no one experiences anything worse than this because it is the worst thing as a parent, right? And so we were able to not have the added burden of secrecy or trying to be super careful about what we said to whom. Like it was, in a way, it was a gift we gave ourselves, right? Because it's hard enough. And we knew that it just felt like we needed to do whatever we could to make it less hard. And the more we spoke about it, the more that we reap the benefit of that openness. And what I mean by that is it really helped our community support us. Everyone's devastated. Everyone's shocked. Everyone's confused. No one knows what to say. But if you don't have to also add, well, I heard or I think someone said, like you don't have to worry about that tiptoeing. It makes it easier for the people who want to support us. And I think in the end, that really helped us, has helped us, continues to help us. Also, people share things. They say, this has happened in my family, or I'm worried about my child, or I'm worried about my partner. And so it opened up a lot of conversation that felt really important to have far beyond Charlie and beyond our family. And so that is really the genesis of putting it together in a book. It is a long-standing therapy tool, writing is. Sometimes it's easier to write things than to say things out loud, certainly these hard things. And I found once I got going with putting my deepest, darkest, most awful thoughts on the page, the easier it got. And certainly not just the relief it provided me to carry on and try and heal, but I became less intimidated by facing the hard truths. And there's nothing that will force hard truths more than losing a child to suicide. About him, about you, about your family, about the world you live in. And for me, I believe they can't be avoided. What you do with them is up to you.
Right.
But you can't hide. It happened. And if you don't face these hard truths. That doesn't mean solve them. That doesn't mean broadcast them to the world, but just face them, acknowledge them. I think it's very hard to heal and move forward. And that's another tragedy. That's a compounding tragedy of you've lost a child and you lose yourself too. And so it just came together for me to say, I am going to go all in on this. And literally while I was writing, I was like, make it worse. The harder it is, the more uncomfortable it is, the more embarrassing it is, the more important it is for me to put it on the page.
Right. Because it's going to be relatable to more people, unfortunately. And fortunately, right? It's both. Thank you for sharing all of that. You said so much. We too did not hide from it. I can't even explain, and I can't tell you that it was anything other than instinctual inside of me. I did not think it through, as far as I didn't have a crisis management background like you did to think through, do we lead with this or not? Just instinctively, there wasn't anything about that made me ashamed of my son. My son was an incredible human, so I wasn't worried
Right.
about hiding that. And I think the first sentence I wrote of his obituary said, Alex ended his life on June.
Yeah.
And I just put it out there because it didn't dawn on me to hide it. Didn't dawn on me to be ashamed of it or to think it became something more conscious shortly after that. I was glad I had done that. I leaned into the fact that, like you said, we didn't have to have the whispers. You have enough of the whispers that happen anyway.
Yeah.
And enough of that happens and so much that you have to deal with. I just led with Alex ended his life and we just went from there. And then I've come to figure out, obviously, in short order, that we have to talk about it. And if we're going to make a change doesn't happen in the easy places. It happens in the uncomfortable spots. And so if some of us aren't willing to go out there and say and do and tell all the things, then the change won't happen. So I know talk about lots of things in the book, but talk about what's important to you right now. Is it the struggle with the grief? Is it learning to live with it, but not dwelling on all of the what ifs that occur, the guilt, which is huge? What is it that you feel like makes sense to talk about right now, Betsy?
I think where I am now is finding the balance. And that implies that it is balanced, but it's not. It can still seesaw. The way to carry Charlie with me and respect the grief, but not lose myself. And that first year and a half, I basically made it my job to understand what was happening to my body and my mind, and my soul, because your whole life is rewritten. The past is rewritten and the future is completely up in the air, right? And so I knew that there was no business as usual and I was hurting and that I would never, it would never be the same and I would never be the person I was before. But hopefully I knew even in the darkest days, I was like, I can't feel like this for the rest of my life, right? I can't. I've got 2 other children. I've got a great husband. I have a beautiful life. Stephen Colbert said, if you love your life, then you love even the bad things. Have you seen that interview?
His interview with Anderson Cooper. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Because Anderson stops him and questions him on that and says, do you really believe that? Oh yeah, I've watched it several times. It's impactful.
It is so powerful. And I saw that interview 2 months after Charlie died. And I really think it shaped the trajectory of my healing. I'm so thankful for that perspective from someone who is decades down the road. For context, he lost his father and 2 brothers in a plane crash. And so he comes by his grief it was a very difficult situation. He was young when it happened. So I believe my life is good and it can be good. So, how can that be with this huge loss? Because it is there. That hole will never go away. Sometimes we all know it really grabs you and pulls you down and makes it hard to focus or take care of yourself. Sometimes it comes in out of the blue and you get a little zap. I got a little zap this morning while I was getting dressed. Oh my gosh, my son, he's dead. Like what? But it is possible. It is possible to make space for all of those things. And really, most of the time, day in, day out, my biggest, strongest emotion is that I miss him. I just miss him. He was a great kid, and he was the central part of our family. And we're that table that lost a leg and we're like wobbling. And so I just wish he was here. So that means I talk to him a lot and I see him all around in nature and in things that happen. I love to blame things on him. He's the beautiful sunset and the chirping birds, but he's also the reason the Wi-Fi went out, and he's also the reason why I'm stuck in traffic. Oh, Charlie, can't you do something about this traffic jam? It helps to bring him into everyday life, to bring him into the good and the bad and celebrate. So he died in July before his senior year of college. And he loved football. Our whole family loves college football. His college had a record-breaking football season that fall. They went to the national championship football game. It was torturous because all we could think was he would have been there. It was his senior year, a championship run, your senior year of college. What cruel gods made that happen, right? And yet we also knew that he was cheering and happy and celebrating with us. And that ultimately, that's how you find joy, is knowing how happy he would have been to be a part of that.
Yeah. Again, with so many similarities, because you're right. And to hear you talk about that, I have to wonder, do you have any favorite signs that you've gotten from Charlie?
So they're everywhere. I'm like, if I want to see him, he's everywhere. But there are a few. So when the light bulbs blink, I feel like that's him talking to me. Never mind that my house is almost 100 years old and the wiring is crap.
It's Virginia. What are you going to do, right?
Right. When the lights blink, it's not the wiring, it's Charlie. And for the longest time, I had, and it started like this is why I make this association. The morning after we learned he died, there's a light right over the vanity in the bathroom, and it would just flicker. And then it would be fine for weeks and months, and then it would just start flickering again. And so I talk to it. I'm like, oh, Charlie, hey, what are you trying to tell me? Or why are you here? Or gosh, really wish you could have seen that game last night, or whatever it is, whatever my mood was. Of course, sometimes I'd be brushing my teeth and it would flicker, and then I would just break down and cry, right? And about 6 months ago, that fixture actually caught on fire. And it wasn't bad.
Did you say, Charlie, this is too far?
And I was like, whoa, something's going on here. What do I need to know? And it was a faulty wire, right? And I was kind of on high alert. I was like, what's happening in my world that I need to pay extra careful? Always buckle your seat belt and look both ways because Charlie's trying to tell me something,
Right.
but I have plenty
Well,
of other blinking light bulbs.
electronics are very easy for spirit world to manipulate, and energy is the one thing that isn't lost. So he was energy before he was here. He's still the same energy. His soul is still there, as you seem to be extremely in touch with, as I am too. And especially given the age they were when they left, it's not a surprise that electronics are something they think about messing with, because I too have had some pretty interesting phenomenon with electronics that some you could probably explain away if you wanted to, but like you, I lean into them. If I want it to be Alex, it's Alex. What, does it hurt anything? I've had people get too worried about proof. I'm not somebody who believes every little thing is, but I always say if you believe it is and it makes you feel good and connected to them, I promise you they're there. Like, I know nobody can see my hands, but there's a Yuli K poem called Next Door, and it's about just being, you're just right here on the other side of the wall, like you're just right next door. And that's the way I think of Alex. I may not be able to see where he's at. I may not, but I know he's here. He's right here all the time. And so to think that he can't decide to flicker a light, or they often do things on phones, or music is a big deal for him. He'll manipulate the songs that come on, especially
Mm-hmm.
on my playlists and things. And a lot of times I ask for it. Like, I'll ask for it. I'll say, okay, kid, I think it's you. Mom needs two more. Because early on, he proved to me that, because I'm kind of hard headed. So he proved to me early on, when I would start doubting, is this him or isn't it him? He started doing things in threes. And then I would go, okay. So the first time I said, okay, I get it, I'm listening, it then became like a pattern. And so sometimes when things start, I always go, that's two. Where's the third? Like, I challenge him now.
Right. Oh, I love that. I
And
love.
I've had several things impactful happen in lots of things with my community and the moms in there. But I had one mom talk about how we always talk about all the memories that we have are the only memories we have. And she was able to phrase it one day by saying, because I don't necessarily agree with that thought process, but she put it into really good words and said that she'd been keeping a journal. She's 6 years in. She'd been keeping a journal for a very long time about signs, and that to her, the signs are the new memories that she has, because sometimes there's stories around the signs about how maybe what she'd asked for, what was going on in her life. And so she's been journaling about her signs, and she looks at those signs as her new stories with her son, and a way to
Mm-hmm.
say all the old memories aren't all I have, because I do have a current relationship with my son in spirit. Therefore, the memories aren't the same. They're not human memories, but I still have memories and experiences with my son, and writing them down helps me remember and keep track of them. The same as if we were taking photos and writing journal entries about things that happen in our human life. She's doing that with her son's memories now and looking at it as a way to say, I'm still having new experiences with my son. And that's one of the great things about developing a relationship in spirit with your child. I don't talk to your
Yes.
brother. I don't talk to your brother this much. I don't talk to you. But and in many ways, I would trade it. Of course I would, to go back and have him in human form. But in many ways, we're closer now than we were before, because he's ever present. He's always around. The close, and that relationship in spirit has been something that I've worked really hard to develop as well. And the stronger that gets, the more I'm like, Alex and I, we're close in life, and we're so much closer now. I would go back. I would go back in
Right.
our,
Of course.
but it's not my path. It's not our path. This was his
Right.
path. And so it is what it is. And you take the joy from it. And like you said, it still kicks you sometimes. I'm as far in as I am. And just yesterday, reading something had that, what did you call it? A shock,
Yeah.
or a
Just a
little,
jolt, a
a
little,
jolt.
yeah.
Yeah. Because I was reading something that seemed mundane, and one word got me, one word.
Yep.
And it was just the word myrrh, like frankincense and myrrh.
Yeah.
But the minute I read it, I was transported back to my 3-year-old son singing in a Christmas play about myrrh with his little accent, because he had a little lisp when he was 3. And I could hear it the second I read the word, and
Yep.
I'm bawling. And my husband just went, and then he remembered, because he's
Yep.
not their dad, but he remembered I've told him the story before. And so he just said,
Yep.
you never know when it's going to happen, do you? And I'm like, gosh, dang it, no. And I got myself back together and kept reading. But I was like, just a word, just a word.
A word, a sound.
A
Yeah,
smell,
it's,
something you don't
yeah.
expect to hear, right? Most of us learn to become very comfortable with crying in restaurants and things because it just happens. You just let everybody wonder
Yes.
why you're crying, and the poor servers are like, "Hey, would you like some more water?"
So my husband and I, a year ago, really were feeling like we needed to get away and do something, just the two of us. We'd always had family vacations before. So we were about a year and a half into the loss. And so we went extravagant and we went to Italy. Neither of us had ever been to Italy. And it was a really great, new faces, new places, new perspective, just the two of us. We had a lot of freedom and just engaging parts of your mind and your brain that don't normally get engaged when, that's going to another country is really great that way. But virtually every meal we cried. And even though we had a great time, and we joked that, especially when we would cry over dinner, we'd be sitting there having this lovely meal with the white tablecloth and the wine, and we'd be holding hands across the table, just sobbing. And we know that everyone in the place thought we were breaking up. And we were like,
That
nope,
poor couple's getting divorced, I'm sure of it. Yeah.
we're coming together. We were united in our loss and our determination to cherish our son, but live well. And when that, I think, taking a splurge to a beautiful place actually brings that to the forefront.
It
Like,
does, and it brings life to the forefront. It brings a
yeah,
really good perspective to how much there is to still live for. And I
right.
tell people when they get really anxious about traveling afterwards, I say it's not the travel you need to worry about. The travel will set you free. Coming home is what you need to prepare for. True. I
Yes.
mean, true.
Yes.
Because that's when you're jolted back into reality, your life is back, all the
Yes.
things. And the travel isn't what you need to be anxious about. It's coming back to
Mm-hmm.
to real life. And
To real,
I
yeah.
I had some ladies at the last retreat in January put it really well. One of them used the term lifey. It was one of the last days, and they were talking about when you go home, just be prepared. Life is going to get very lifey on you really fast.
Yeah, that's true.
But what a great story. And as a former executive chef who's very far away from that world now, I will tell you that it doesn't surprise me that we cry at dinner tables because that's where so many great things in this world occur is around a dinner table, whether it's two of us or 20 of us. That's where a lot of very real conversations and moments happen. So I've just become very comfortable with crying at the table. Because that's when it just seems to happen. It's when you get into connective conversations with people. Talk about the book for a minute. Talk about the significance of the Blackbird, if you will. Got this
Sure.
beautiful Blackbird on the front for, I know all you can't see us, but it's a watercolor, which is near and dear to my heart. I'm about to launch a project that is very watercolor in style with its artwork too. And strangely enough, the coloring of the book is very similar. I think the purple navigates to this space a lot, but I want you to talk about your beautiful book and why Blackbird.
So, yeah, thank you for calling out this bird. A dear friend of mine actually painted that for me, and we're childhood friends. And so it's multiple levels of special to me to have her artwork that truly was created in love for the cover of the book, which I created in love for my son. So, Blackbird is so a lot of people are familiar with the Beatles song Blackbird. Paul McCartney sings it. It's beautiful. It's not a lullaby, but it's very soothing. And my parents loved music when I was little growing up, and my dad loved the Beatles, and he played guitar. This is in the 60s and early 70s. And Blackbird was one of the songs that he played. And I loved it as a kid. That was just, play it again. And so I have very strong association between that song and my father. And this is, you're talking about food, music, same thing, right? It is really powerful connection that music makes between people. My father died in 2009. My children were young. They knew him. They were in early middle school kind of age. But we gave my father's guitar to my son, Charlie, and he picked it up in earnest in when he got to high school, and he kind of threw himself into the music program at his high school, and he did all the coursework, and he turned out to be very talented. And I said at some point, I think when he was a freshman or sophomore, I said, if you really want to make me happy, you'll learn to play Blackbird because it reminds me of your grandfather. And he said, okay. And he was a very quiet, humble kid. But one day he comes home and he says, let's go in the back patio. I have something to show you. And he sat down and he played Blackbird, the whole thing. And I have it on video. I was so moved. I cried. It was just this beautiful moment. And that became, if you anybody has ever had a musician in the house, you know that they have a repertoire. They have songs that they just always go back to. And that became one of his songs. So it's a very strong connection between that song, my father, and my son. When Charlie died, we learned a lot of things about him after, because he was pretty private when he was around. He was 21, right? But his friends, we've made friends with his friends. Some, of course, we knew, but some, they're new friendships since we've lost him. And so we've learned a lot, including the fact that he always played the song Blackbird when he was like hanging out. He was the soundtrack, and that he may or may not have used it as kind of a wooing song for the girls, because a couple of people said, yes, I remember he used to play that on the guitar for me. And I was like, oh, you too. So lovely. But the kicker and the reason why, and you talk about signs and you talk about ways things come together. I looked into the song. It was recorded by the Beatles on my birthday. Charlie was conceived on my birthday. The last weekend I saw him alive was my birthday.
I have hairs on the back of my neck standing up. You don't make that stuff up, ma'am.
You do not make that stuff up. That is, I mean, I felt the connection already, right? Because of again, the music. Most people can identify a song or songs that really bind us to important people or memories or moments or times in our life. But the same day, June 11th. So
I'm kind of speechless. I'm not rendered speechless very often. So have blackbirds themselves had any significant for you? Not that the song isn't enough, because it is. It's enough. I just have to ask because it seems obvious to say, so have blackbirds showed up in your life?
I mean, so the straight answer is yes, they're everywhere. But I also have to admit, there are a lot of birds where I live. So you're talking about signs and things you have that are directly between you and your son. There's some of these sort of generalized things, and there's things that are very specific. And I realized early on that if I made blackbirds, which by the way, that is a general grouping to describe a lot of different types of birds: crows, ravens, grackles, red-winged blackbirds. It's a lot of different categories. If I'd fall over if I thought every single
Blackbird.
blackbird I saw or heard. Now, that does not keep me from watching a crow fly by and say, "Oh, hey, bud, how you doing?" But I cannot assign the actual birds too much importance, because that I
because there's
would
so many of them around.
kind of
Yeah.
lose my mind. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, is there any significance to it holding what to me looks like a ginkgo leaf?
Yes, it is a ginkgo leaf, and there is significance to that. So, ginkgo, and this came to us after he died. So, he loved the song Yellow by Coldplay. And so I latched on to the color yellow because obviously that's pretty literal. And when after he died, we had a lot of folks gift us trees in his memory. And we're lucky we have a nice large yard. And our neighbors said, pick any tree you want to put anywhere in your property. It's for Charlie. And so I thought, I want to find a tree with the most yellow leaves. And I looked, and geckos in the fall have these glorious yellow leaves. And they're also uniquely shaped, they're fan shaped. And so I was like, great, that's what I want. And we had one installed in our front yard so all our neighbors could see it. And then I I looked in, said, wanted to understand about this tree and what we've done and what we'd selected. And apparently it's thought to be the oldest living tree on earth, the ginkgo. They live forever, but they also have existed forever, like back to the dinosaurs. And for that reason, ginkgo trees are associated with a lot of spirituality all over the world, particularly in Asia. But there are some Western lore around ginkgo leaves, ginkgo trees, ginkgo fruit. And I think the trees have some medicinal qualities. And so I was like, oh, I love that. I love that it's sort of steadfast and always here and had for till the end of time, right? So was feeling really good about my decision. And then on the 1 year anniversary of Charlie's death, his best friend posted a picture and a post. Miss you. Can't believe you've been gone a year. Lovely, straightforward. And it was a picture of Charlie at their high school. And he's making a scrunched up face. It's like a goofy face, like a really kind of snarly face. And he's holding a ginkgo leaf in his fingers in front of his face. And I was like, okay, that's funny. I didn't know. And so I thought that was a really nice coincidence. A year later, so 2 years after Charlie's death, I'm talking to his friend, same friend that posted the picture. And he tells me, and I'm talking about that picture and how funny it was. And I've got the ginkgo tree in my front yard and whatever. And he said, yeah, I remember taking that picture of Charlie. We were cutting up between class, and I picked up the ginkgo leaf from the ground and I gave it to him. And I said, Charlie, did you know ginkgo trees are the oldest trees on earth? And he took it from me and put it in front of his face and made a scrunched up, sarcastic face. That's what's in the photograph. And he said, I don't give a blankety blank that this is the oldest tree on earth. And he like made some snarky, sarcastic look, it's the oldest tree on earth about the ginkgo leaf. So, which is just, he was 16, right? He was just cutting up with his friends. He was being silly. He was ribbing his best friend who loved nature. And that was the moment that his friend captured. And I was like, that is so Charlie. That is so, him. And so that's why. So ginkgo has to be.
Yeah, but that feels serendipitous to me. That feels almost
Yeah.
foreshadowing and all sorts of things that make you go,
Yeah.
yeah.
And the way that those, that perspective came to us a year and 2 years after he died, right? it's not like we heard the story in that
And
kind
then
of
you
heady
decided I need
time
this
when,
tree and yeah.
right. We picked it and then we learned the relationship that he had with that tree.
That's
So,
amazing. Thank you for sharing that story. That's incredible. So, but yeah, I thought there has to be a significance that doesn't seem like a random thing that a painter would put a ginkgo. I mean, I guess they could, but I figured for
yeah,
a project like this, there was probably some intentionality behind it. So, did he play football in college? I know he was loving it, but he didn't play it. He just loved it.
he did not play. He
Because
was
I know
a
in the
year
beginning
round.
of the book, you have a picture of him in a football
Yeah,
jersey. So,
he was a year round athlete, but he did not play in college. So he played football, basketball, lacrosse, some baseball, golf. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just wondered. He's such a handsome young man
Thank you.
and such bright eyes. But so it's you look back and you see him so full of life, right? You see him so full of like just everything. And I always felt like Alex never slowed down. He was always just, and now I think, of course, he didn't slow down. He only had 21 years here, right? I mean, something in their soul, I think, knows. I think his soul knew when he was young. I found lots of what I have come to call breadcrumbs that I feel like at that age when he was between second and fourth grade, there was still a youngness and innocence in him. So even though he didn't consciously know what he was doing, the soul knew. His soul knew he was only here for a time. And I feel like he was an old soul because there just was so much about him. He lived so hard and so large and so big. And it just makes sense later. I mean, as much as it doesn't make sense the way they died, but it makes sense the way they lived, right?
Yes.
So I'm just looking back and seeing. So I would like you to talk before anything else you want to share about the book, but I don't want to be remiss and not ask about the bracelets because you've created a special bracelet in honor of Charlie or the book or both. I'm not sure which. So I want you to be able to share that. And as we get ready to wrap up, anything else you feel like you haven't shared that you want to? Because we could just do this forever. That's what people don't understand.
Yeah.
Moms can talk about their kids for a very long time. So,
Yeah. I would like to talk a little bit about the structure of the book, specifically because I wrote it for grievers. I wrote it in real time. I mean, I began writing things down. And I think as your work with this community, you can probably understand and appreciate how hard it is to function, to think, to make decisions, to concentrate, especially in the early days, but really it comes and goes at any given time. It's fascinating and amazing how the brain just kind of breaks down when you have been through this type of trauma and grief. And I'm a voracious reader. And so after I lost my son, I read everything I could get my hands on. And I mean, there was no corner of the internet that I did not explore because I wanted to know what was happening to me, right?
yeah.
And what was happening to my family and what happened to my son. And what I found is there's a lot of great stuff out there. And there's a lot to sort of dive into. But I had a couple of challenges. One, I couldn't concentrate because I was in deep grief and trauma. And
I was about to
I
commend you
also,
for being able to read, but you were having trouble concentrating.
oh, I was having so
Okay.
much trouble.
I was like, because I couldn't manage to focus enough I had to keep going back. So you did too. That makes me feel better.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, totally. And so the other thing I found was that books sort of fell into two categories. One would be self help, and that's written by experts. We need that. We need the people who have committed their lives and who have studied and practiced. They know the science, they know the psychology, they know the sociology, the spirituality. They know what they're talking about. They can explain it in these ways. They tend to have letters after their names and be experts.
They're like Bessel van der Kolk. It's a great book, but it's sciency.
It's
And
sciencey.
we need that stuff, but we also need the other stuff.
But it's really also, if you're an expert on the role that nutrition plays in the grieving process, you're a hammer and that's a nail. And that's it. That's all you can focus on. I'm like, great, I need nutrition, but I also need sleep and fresh air and brain exercises and spiritual counseling and all these things. So I have all these books. And then the other side of the equation, you have memoirs. And there are some beautiful, really eye-opening and life-changing memoirs from people who unfortunately have been sitting where we sit. And we have a lot to learn from each other, which you live this and breathe this every day. That's why you do what you do. But I found, particularly the first year, I was so selfish in my grief. I didn't have time for anyone else's story. I didn't have time to learn the biography of the writer or their family or what happened in the formative years that may have set things on this trajectory. I couldn't hold on to the characters or things like that. So when I decided to write Blackbird, I had those main things in mind. And I wrote it not as one long narrative, but as a series of short excerpts and passages. I challenged myself to use as few words as possible. It is not a biography of my son. It is not a biography of myself. It is not a how-to book. It is how I got through this. And I wanted to show every aspect. How did my daughters react? How did my husband react? How did our community react? What did we learn about Charlie? What did we always know about Charlie? And so there are some longer passages and essays, but I think the longest section is probably 2 pages. It's heavy, it's hard, and I want readers, whether they have experienced this grief or not, to be able to put it down and stop and think about what they've read or
and not be
step
in the middle
away
of a
from
big
it.
chapter. Yeah, that's the
Right.
part so far I love about it is the little ginkgo leaves that divide all the parts. And like you said, I don't think there's anything that's more than a couple pages at most. Some things are little paragraphs or even lines that you put in there.
Yes. And that was intentional. I want people to be able to pick it up when they're able and when they're ready, and not feel like they will lose the thread if they have to step away, particularly if they've been through this before. But I think even of people who are trying to maybe support someone who's gone through a loss like this, certainly suicide, but even just if you have someone who's grieving and you're not quite sure how to best support them, I hope that my experience and showing the way that our support and community and how that came together and the positive effect it had on us can help others as well.
Yeah. Well, and I think that can serve even non-deep grievers well to have the snippets, because if you're a supporter,
Yes.
then by nature you're caring enough. If you're a supporter and you care enough to pick up a book and try to learn how to better support someone you care about, that says a lot. But for them to have to spend the time to, like you said, get into books that have characters and chapters and storylines, that's still a lot for somebody to take on. This allows a supporter even to take it in bites and things that matter or things that can resonate with them, because you can, when it's broken up in simple chewable pieces. I
Yeah.
always say you can't eat a dinosaur at once, right? You need to, or maybe it's an
Right.
elephant, but anyway, you're not supposed to eat it in one bite.
Either.
Yeah. And so it allows you to then break it up in a way that works for you and be more
Yes.
digestible, which I really love. I'm all for. Years ago now, I put out a survival guide that I always say, don't expect some meaty, science-y book. This is from one mom to another grieving person in this loss, of how do you really go about it. And I call it digestible because that's an easy way for me to not call my own book dumbed down. It's very digestible. It's very
Right.
relatable. It's very, like you said, you can do it in small pieces. It's not something that, you have to take in all at once to understand. and it makes a difference, right? Okay, so people can get it everywhere. They can get it on
Any
Amazon.
Anywhere books are sold, Amazon, bookshop.org. You can talk to your local booksellers.
Let's say if your local booksellers aren't carrying it, I'm always an advocate of try to get your local booksellers to carry these books, because if we can not buy everything mass, that's great. I mean, it's not always possible.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's paperback, ebook, and Audible or audiobook.
And I'd like you to read something from the book, if you would, before, as we're wrapping up, and make sure that there's nothing else you want to absolutely be sure you share or talk about before we get to that.
No, I think that's good. We've covered a lot of ground, and I'm happy to read. This is actually one of my longer passages, so that's going to, we're going to challenge. Actually, no, let me find a different one. Okay. One this is specifically, I think, for grievers. I hope it's something that other people don't go through, but as I have mentioned many times, I have been fascinated with the way the brain and the body reacts to this kind of loss. And so when I was in it, I'm still in it, but like,
In the thick of it,
in up to my neck in it, I was paying very close attention to a lot of what was happening to me in my brain and my body. And I'm fortunate to have excellent medical care. And so I just pumped them for information and perspective. And I have a passage about something that I learned. My brain is scrambled eggs, but I'm trying to work. My broken brain frantically spins, seeking purchase on anything that might help solve the biggest problem of my life. How can my son be gone? Finding no comprehensible answers, my brain clamps down on anything with a melody and refuses to detach. Almost everyone experiences earworms, that cognitive itch that demands scratching. Those annoying little bleepers. I cuss in this book.
That's okay. You can cuss.
Those annoying little fuckers are the lifeblood of pop music, advertising jingles, and children's songs because they work. Merely typing the letters BABYSHARK sends our brains into a vortex of unshakable sound. Attempts to release ourselves from the Macarena or Cars for Kids just produce a psychological histamine that causes the songs to burrow deeper. Earworms are driving me mad. That sound that reverberates behind the Netflix logo. Boom, boom. Those two beats between my ears over and over. The classic rock anthems that are the soundtrack of every advertising campaign during college sporting events roar in my head. It's so intense, I rub my temples and even catch myself pulling my hair. My therapist tells me that stuck song syndrome is a sign of a brain trying and failing to solve a problem. Valid point, because I really can't understand anything about a new reality that stretches ahead without my youngest child. My therapist suggests running lo-fi music in the background when I work or read. Lo-fi doesn't include the hooks that torment me. Instead, it pulls my brain away from the circular thinking. I try it. I can't actually say I like lo-fi, which comes packaged in ethereal and cringy names like Floating Island, Into the Fog, and Cozy Cuddles, but it works. It's calming and soothing without being distracted. Most importantly, it tugs my mind away from the incessant looping earworms. I don't know if you experienced that. I could not hear anything without it getting stuck in my head. And I mean, I was pulling my hair out. This is for months after Charlie died.
I have never
I
heard it explained. I have on and off throughout this journey at times had that happen. Music's a very big part of my connection to Alex and in general our family. And I just thought it was something that was, I don't know. Because I couldn't I don't I didn't have an explanation for it. I've never heard stuck on song syndrome. That's incredible.
it's beyond just the association and the emotion to the song. It's it was in my head. I mean, and like it was so loud. I got to the point where we're college sports fans. We weekends, I mean, it's a great escape when you're overwhelmed and you're grieving. You sort of throw yourself into a match of any kind,
Mm.
and it's not about you, it's about something else, and you can get lost in it. And then those commercials would come on, and oh my gosh, I couldn't take it. I would leave the room, but I could still, it's like it got the song would get its tendrils in my head, and then it would just it would not let go. Could not, and I'd try and fall asleep at night and it was there. And
You'd wake
so
up and it was still there.
it's
Yeah.
still there. So lo-fi music, a lot of kids actually use it to study. I've learned, and it's kind of weird, but I put it on like anytime when I'm working and I'm going about my job. I put it next to my computer, and I love the visual that it's pulling my brain away in a way that allows me to focus on what I'm doing and not get into those grooves of that grief and pain and circular thinking.
Interesting. Thank you so much. I hope everybody is excited to get it. I will put all of the links in the show notes that are appropriate, but will you tell everybody where to find you, the book?
Sure. I do have a website. It's called blackbirdbetsy.com. And the book Blackbird is available Amazon, barnesandnoble.com, bookshop.org, or you can go into your local bookseller and ask them to order a copy for you. So, and I'm on Instagram too, Blackbird Betsy 21.
Course 21. Yeah. I've got 21 associated with a lot of my stuff too. We've got sevens in our world, and 21 is the
Yeah,
same age
it's
Alex
three
was. But
sevens.
yeah, yeah. It's amazingly, right? Three, and Alex died on the
Mm-hmm.
seventh, and we could keep going. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. But I'm so appreciative of this. I would love for you to take just a couple of minutes because I forgot to go back to the bracelets.
Oh, yes. So when Charlie died, his fraternity, great kids, they had some wristbands made that say check on your friends, and they have Charlie's name and dates on them. And they passed them out at his funeral, and we sent them to people in our community. And then people started asking for them, and it has just blown up. There are people who wear these wristbands 3 years in. Whenever they go someplace new, they take a picture of the wristbands, and I'm like, they're carrying Charlie with them to Australia or the beach or to see the penguins in South Africa or whatever, the soccer match. And it really has been a beautiful way for his friends and our friends to carry Charlie. People have also come together over the wristbands. They have met over the wristbands. I have so many stories of people sitting in next to each other on an airplane and saying, "Wait, you have one of those? How do you know Charlie?" And in fact, strangers who are coming together. My editor for Blackbird, she was editing the book, and she went to the climbing gym, and she saw someone wearing the wristband. And she said, "Wait a minute, I'm literally editing the words right now about these wristbands, about Charlie Stevenson." And the guy was like, "Yeah, I didn't know him, but I knew his sisters." So, like, totally, it's really, I feel like people want to be connected.
Yep.
And these tragedies are, as you said, we would do anything to go back. We don't want them to happen. We don't want these empty places in our life. But if you look, there are these connections and this opening and this vulnerability that we can have with each other in our communities that don't make it okay. Okay. It's not okay that Charlie's gone and Alex is gone. It's not okay. But our world can be a little stronger for having had them in it. And these connections, I think, really bring that to life every day.
I agree. I agree so much. What a great place to end. Betsy, this has been such an honor. We could talk forever. It's been my honor to get to spend time with you, but to get to know Charlie a little bit has been really incredible. Thank you for sharing him and part of him and you and your journey. It means so much. And I can't wait for people to get their hands on the book.
Thank you.
Thank you. Until we talk soon, my friend, thank you so much. Bye-bye. So, grievers, if you are still listening, in addition to that anthology book I talked about at the beginning, I also have a new Just for Bereaved Moms one-on-one coaching program called Destination Me that will help you release guilt and rebuild self-trust after a child lost by suicide. I have intended to start this one-on-one work for some time. Apparently now is the time. So reach out soon, as I only have a few spots available, but it would be my honor to hold a space for you. So now, as my thank you to you, I want to offer you 5% off of both of these offers I've talked about today, the Because They Are Loved Poetry and Letters Anthology, as well as my new one-on-one coaching program. The coupon code for 5% off of either of these through June 30th only is podcast5. This is my thank you to you for being a listener. And remember, you're not alone. We are in this together. So thank you for joining me today, grievers. If today's episode resonated with you, please consider subscribing to get weekly updates when I drop new episodes. And please take a moment to rate and review the podcast with 5 stars, especially on Apple Podcasts. Your support helps so much because it's how others are able to find the podcast and this community. Remember, though it may feel impossible now, hope and healing are within reach. I invite you to connect further by visiting my website, theleftoverpieces.com, where you'll find support, legacy options, retreats, resources, online Zoom groups, and so much more. Together, we can navigate this journey of healing. We can put our hearts, our leftover pieces, back together. And as they say here in Puerto Rico, poco a poco, juntas podemos. Little by little, together we can. Take care and talk soon.